Most people think that paralysis is just having a very rigid and very stiff body. But the reality is that it's a lot more complex than that. And it involves movement and it involves sensation as well below the level of your injury. Because I was hurt at the C5, C6 level in my spinal cord, in my spine, that determines that below my injury level, so around the level of my armpits all the way down, my body is affected both in physical movement, voluntary movement, and also sensation-wise. So for me, about 80% of my body has paralysis, and this is what it feels like. So like I said, for me, paralysis means about 80% or 85% of my body around my chest level all the way down means that I have no voluntary movement and also no full sensation. Now, I have an incomplete spinal cord injury, which means that the spinal cord was cut only partially, but in my case, it was almost completely severed, almost completely cut, because I have no movement below the level of my injury and just have some faint sensation, which is helpful sometimes, but at the same time, it's also very confusing sometimes. So let me talk first about physical movement. There are two types of movement that you might have if you have a spinal cord injury or paralysis, and the first one is voluntary movement. So if you're lucky enough to have some sort of movement before the level of your injury, you can voluntarily move your leg, you can voluntarily move parts of your body below that injury. In my case, I have no movement below my injury that's voluntary. Now, there's also involuntary movement. My legs can sometimes involuntary move, so I can shake them up a little bit, and you'll see it shake a little bit here and there. I can do that. If you can tell, my legs are shaking a little bit. That means that there's muscle spasms, that's spasticity, and I can talk about that in another video, but that's involuntary. I have no control over that. I can only trigger it and do that like that. Let me trigger it again, like that. See, and it's shaking, and that's what's called, spasticity or muscle spasms, which are helpful in a way, but not so helpful sometimes when they're just extreme and then just very, very a pain in the butt, really. But the reality is that, spasticity is helpful because it keeps the blood flowing, and also it just helps you keep some tone in your legs. But that's really involuntary. So what's going on is that my body's trying to tell my brain something, and it sends the message, starts bouncing up and down my spinal cord and my nervous system, and it just never gets to my brain. So that's what the spasms are. So that's what movement is for paralysis. Doesn't mean that you're rigid, doesn't mean that your joints don't move. It just means that you don't have voluntary movement, and then that you can't really move it whenever you want to. Now, the second part about paralysis is the sensation part. Obviously, since my injury was at my chest, upper chest level, around C7 of the neck, which is the lower part of the neck in the spine, that means that from that injury, all the way down to my toes, I also have no sensation, because the spinal cord not only carries movement messages, it also carries the messages that my body is trying to tell me all the way up to my brain to tell me what's going on down there, right? So if I have an ingrown toenail, I have no ability to tell, although my body does have ways to tell, autonomic dysreflexia, and I'll talk about that in another video. But the reality is that I have almost no sensation in my lower body. Now, some people might have an incomplete injury, like I said, where the spinal cord wasn't really severed, maybe not even severed halfway, and they might have some sensation below the body. Now, I do have some sensation. I can tell a little bit of when I have to go, number one, and number two, to the bathroom, and I can also tell when my legs are tired. But the reality is that I have almost no sensation. You can poke me with a needle in my leg, you can poke me with a pen, you can put something hot, something cold, and I have no idea that that's going on. Now, I do feel a little bit of a burning sensation from my stomach and from my waist all the way down. So there's a little bit of like pins and needles and burning that's happening. But if you were to, talk about it being, in terms of a scale from 1 to 10, it's really like a 2 or maybe like a 3. Now, I know some people that have phantom pain. They have, just nerve pain all the way down through their legs, and they suffer all the time because it's really painful. and it just doesn't go away, and they just have to take medication. They have to do all these things. They have these crazy pain sensations that are just overwhelming all the time. In my case, fortunately, I don't have any pain. I just do feel like aches sometimes from being, in a sitting position for a long time, and then I feel the little burning sensation, the pins and needles, but nothing nothing that'll stop me from living and going through my daily activities. So that's really helpful. But in the end, movement, is one thing, sensation is the other, and then that's kind of how it feels. But overall, in a nutshell, I think that paralysis is a lot more than just, having a stiff body. It really involves sensation, it involves movement, involuntary movement, and all these things that just make it cloudy. It makes it very difficult to know what's going on. So mentally, you have to think about your body in a different way. You have to take care of it as if it's not a part of you. So you have to take care of the skin, you have to take care of just stretching. You have to do all these things to make sure that your body is in good shape, because you don't have the sensation and you don't have the feeling and the movement to do those things on your own. If you have a spinal cord injury, let me know how you feel. Let me know what sensation is like for you. Let me know what voluntary movement you have or you don't have in the comments below. And then maybe we'll talk about spasticity later, and also autonomic dysreflexia, which I talk about, two very important things for spinal cord injury people. And I'll talk about those in another video. Like, subscribe, do all that good stuff, guys. See you next one.